Hi everyone, it's Katrina. In honor of one of the first videos ever made on this channel, it seemed about time for a remake. From an airplane hijacker to escaping the most secure prison in the world, here are 10 famous cases of people who mysteriously disappeared. Number 10. D.B. Cooper. On November 24, 1971, a mysterious man using the fake identity of D.B. Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Seattle, Washington to Portland, Oregon. Soon after it had taken off from Portland, he ordered a cocktail and passed a note to a flight attendant that claimed he had a bomb in his briefcase. He then opened it to show her he was serious, and sure enough, inside there were a series of wires, red sticks, and a battery. He demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills. When the plane landed in Seattle, the authorities provided him with what he asked for, and he released all of the other passengers, but he kept 2 pilots, an engineer, and an attendant on the plane. And after it refueled, he told them to fly to Mexico City, with explicit instructions to remain under 10,000 feet and at a speed of less than 200 knots. He didn't make it to Mexico. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Nevada, he lowered the steps of the plane and jumped out. From that point, D.B. Cooper vanished without a trace. The FBI opened an investigation that looked at 800 suspects in the first 5 years, but found no evidence to indict anyone. In 1980, a boy in the local area found a package containing $5,800 of 20s, which were confirmed to have been a part of the ransom money, but a subsequent search found nothing else in the vicinity. In 2016, the History Channel featured a documentary mentioning the name Robert Rackstraw, a 74-year-old Vietnam veteran. Allegedly, a group of former FBI investigators found proof in a series of letters, but in 2016, the FBI officially closed the case. It remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in the United States. Number 9. Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa became the president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, a large labor union in the US and Canada in 1957, and became a popular leader because of his dedication to growing the union and working hard to fight even for those lowest in the ranks. However, his name went down in history not because of his tireless efforts on behalf of the workforce, but because of his mysterious disappearance in 1975, one that has never been solved. His last known whereabouts was the car park of the Red Fox restaurant in a suburb of Detroit. He had told friends that he was going there to meet with 2 mafia leaders. His relationship with them had been up and down throughout his tenure at the union, and he was meeting with them to smooth things over. The next morning, his wife realized that he hadn't returned home, and so began years of investigations, with the FBI failing to find any leads. He was declared legally dead in 1982, but theories about his disappearance still come to light to this day. Was he buried in the Giants Stadium, buried in a 50-gallon drum, or did he simply run away and assume a new identity? The truth will probably never be known for sure, and this remains one of the biggest mysterious disappearances of the 20th century. Number 8. Harold Holt. The location of the people who lead the nations is closely monitored for security reasons, but occasionally they can fall off the grid, and in the case of Harold Holt, mysteriously disappear forever. He was the Prime Minister of Australia as the leader of the Liberal Party and was elected to the highest office in 1966. Said to be a political centrist, he oversaw the introduction of the Australian dollar during his tenure, but would only hold the top position for 23 months. On the 17th of December 1967, Holt was swimming in the sea near Portsea in Victoria. The water was choppy and he suddenly vanished. Despite extensive searches to try to find him or retrieve his body, no remains were ever found, and he was declared dead in absentia. The lack of a body means that a number of conspiracy theories have been put forward to explain the mystery beyond an accidental drowning, with the most famous one suggesting he was kidnapped by a secret Chinese submarine. The truth will likely never be known, but since the incident, bodyguards have been kept close to successive prime ministers just to make sure it doesn't happen again. And now for number 7, but first, if you are new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe and join the Origins Explained family. Number 7. Brian Schaffer. Brian Schaffer was a hardworking medical student looking forward to a successful career in medicine, but this all changed in 2006 when he disappeared in seemingly impossible circumstances. He was celebrating spring break with his friends on March 31st at the Ugly Tuna Saloon bar in Columbus, Ohio. For some reason, he was separated from them and they assumed he had gone home, but a security camera at the bar's only entrance clearly showed him re-entering just before 2 a.m. That was the last time he was seen, and since then, there has been no clue as to what happened to him. When the bar closed, everyone else left through the door, but Schaffer did not emerge. Investigations into what happened came up empty. Was he killed? Was there another way out of the bar? Did he run away and start a new life? And if so, why? Despite an intensive search, including through the city's sewers, police eventually had to close the case without a resolution. Number 6. Natalee Holloway. Natalee Holloway was a typical teenager, having just graduated from Mountain Brook High School in Alabama in 2005. She had been a part of the school dance squad, a member of the National Honor Society, and had earned a full scholarship to the University of Alabama. In late May of that year, she traveled with 124 other graduates to Aruba for a graduation trip, but after 5 days of drinking cocktails and enjoying herself in the sun, she failed to arrive for the return flight. Authorities found her passport and her packed luggage in her hotel room, but as for Natalee, there was no trace. Despite tracking down suspects that she had been seen with, the investigations by police found no trace of her. Since 2005, a number of people have been arrested, places have been explored, and bone fragments have been tested, but not a single piece of evidence has been found that explains what happened to her. The prime suspect was Joran Andreas Petrus van der Sloot, and even though he allegedly confessed to a friend, it was not enough for police. In 2010, he was convicted of killing another young lady in Peru. Natalee was legally declared deceased in 2012. Number 5. Heinrich Mueller. In the final days of the Nazi regime, a large number of war criminals vanished, fleeing to other countries around the world, but there's one person, senior official Heinrich Mueller, whose disappearance was of particular interest. That's because of his role in what happened during the Second World War. He was the head of the Gestapo secret police and was a trusted senior ally of you-know-who, Himmler and Eichmann. Intrinsically involved in the planning of the Holocaust, Mueller had a lot to answer for. He was heard saying that he would never let himself be captured by the Russians. He was loyal to the end, even being seen in an official capacity on the day that you-know-who committed suicide, but by the time Berlin had surrendered to the Soviets, he was gone. Did he flee to South America, join forces with the Russians, or was he killed and buried in a mass grave with others who fought to the end? Allied investigators hunting these officials found no conclusive evidence that he had died or escaped. For many years, his fate was unknown, but in 2013, a German historian claimed that he died in Berlin in 1945. But sightings of the man all over the world continue. Number 4. Virginia Dare. Virginia Dare was the first child born to English parents in the New World colonies in 1587 and became the face of colonialism efforts. She and her family were a part of a new colony of 120 people on Roanoke Island in what is now North Carolina. The story of what happened to these colonists is shrouded in mystery. Her grandfather, John White, was the governor of the colony, and he returned to England the same year Virginia Dare was born to get more resources and supplies for the colony. When he was about to return, England was in a full-fledged war with Spain, so he wasn't able to go back until 3 years later. When he arrived, there was no trace of the colonists. The place was abandoned. It's the first recorded case of missing people in the Americas, and the only clue as to what had happened was a carving on a post of the fort that said Croatoan, and crow carved into a nearby tree. This led many to suspect a local tribe had kidnapped or killed the settlers, or they could have even left and willingly joined the tribe. Maybe they were hungry. There was no emergency symbol carved anywhere, so White took it to mean that they had left to Croatoan Island, but he was never able to find them or his daughter or granddaughter. The truth was never discovered, and Roanoke Island became known as the Lost Colony. Number 3. The MV Joyita. The MV Joyita was a merchant vessel that had an eventful time in service. At first, the wooden ship was a luxury yacht, and during the Second World War, it was turned into a patrol boat for the big island of Hawaii. Following the war, it was upgraded and became a trading and fishing boat. It's most notorious for events in 1955, though, when its 25 passengers and crew mysteriously vanished while it was sailing in the South Pacific. It was found 5 weeks after it went missing and was adrift, empty, and in a state of disrepair more than 600 miles off its scheduled route. Despite its condition, the MV Joyita was still seaworthy, so it's unclear why the crew felt the need to abandon it. That's if they abandoned it at all. The radio was tuned in to the International Maritime Distress frequency, and ominously all of the clocks on the boat had stopped at the same time, 10:25. The navigational equipment and firearms were all missing, and a doctor's bag was found on the deck with blood-stained bandages. Still to this day, no explanation has been found for what happened to the 25 people, with the only suggestion being that they passed a fleet of ships, possibly Japanese in origin, and witnessed something they shouldn't have, so were quietly silenced. Number 2. Frank Morris. Located on an island in San Francisco Bay and surrounded by inhospitable waters, Alcatraz was notoriously one of the most secure prisons ever constructed and said to be impossible to escape from. During the time it was a prison, 36 prisoners are known to have attempted to escape, and officially, none ever succeeded. But unofficially, maybe. There's a story from 1962 that questions this record. Two brothers and their accomplice, Frank Morris, escaped the prison walls but were assumed to have drowned as they tried to make the journey from the island to the mainland on a raft made from inflated raincoats. But could they have all survived and disappeared into obscurity, able to live the rest of their lives in freedom? A letter sent to the San Francisco Police Department in 2013 suggests that this might have been the case. It was so compelling that the FBI even reopened their investigation to try to get to the bottom of it. It claimed that Morris had died in 2008, one of the brothers in 2011, and that the letter was from the other brother who was offering to turn himself in exchange for medical treatment. There was a list of demands in the letter, but the authorities didn't comply. Convinced that the letter was a hoax, they investigated it as much as they could and closed the case once more. Number 1. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was one of the last great explorers. She was the first female pilot to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, the first to fly across the American continent and back, and set a number of other records during her illustrious career. She was a strong advocate for women's rights and was even believed by some to have been a spy for the U.S. government during her flights. In her memoir that was published in 1932, she famously said that flying may not be all plain sailing, but the fun of it is worth the price. Of course, the price soon turned out to be her life after her mysterious disappearance while she was attempting to circumnavigate the world. In 1937, she began her second attempt at doing so in her Lockheed Electra 10E. After takeoff, problems soon began arising with her onboard radio, which meant that for periods of time she had no contact with her support crew. Messages were received on her approach to Howland Island in the Pacific, but the plane vanished. The USCGC Itasca was on site as a support vessel and began searching for Earhart within an hour of the last transmission, but they found no sign of the plane or any wreckage. The search continued for almost 2 weeks, and at the time was the most expensive rescue attempt ever, but there was not a trace of what had happened. While most think Earhart and her co-pilot Fred Noonan crashed into the ocean and sunk, something that was not unheard of in aviation at the time, there has been a range of theories put forward to explain her disappearance. Maybe she and Fred actually landed on a different island and lived out the rest of their lives there. They could have turned back mid-flight, or some even think that they were kidnapped by the Japanese. It's a mystery that's gripped people's imaginations for more than 80 years, and probably will keep on doing so for many more years to come. Thanks for watching! To all of our subscribers, thank you so much for your continued support and for joining us as we work on making this channel even better. See you next time. Bye!